So today we have got a picture here from Ailey Burns. And Ailey is 10 years old, and I hope that you can all see this. From where I'm sitting, the light is reflecting, but it is an absolutely beautiful picture. There is a boy, and this boy has got lost, she's described, and he finds, as he's walking through the woods, he finds a potion, and when he drinks it, a magic door appears. So these are the instructions that I have to go on. So this is our beautiful picture. We've got a wonderful forest and we've got little creatures in there as well. Okay, so that is our first picture. Now, the second picture that I have got is from Mila, and Mila is 3 years old. And oh, look at this. Now, admittedly, when I first saw this, when it popped up on my screen, I was wondering, is it a face or is it something symbolic of a coronavirus? I don't know if anybody at home also got this, but it is a face. It is a face after further clarification. So I have got these two amazing pictures and I am going to turn them into a story. Once upon a time, there was a boy, and this boy, well, he was a very adventurous boy, and he decided to go for a walk through the woods. And he was there having a wonderful time, whistling a tune, looking left, looking right, looking up, looking down, when suddenly he saw on a tree a tiny little bottle. And this was very unusual, and right by the bottle there was a sign, and it said, "Drink the potion." Now, I don't know about you guys, if you would ever drink a potion that you found hanging on the side of a tree, but he thought, yes, that seems like a good adventurous thing to do. So he did. He took off the lid and he drank it, and immediately, poof, a magic door appeared. I mean, look at all that lightning flashing around it. There was a huge glow, and the boy was terribly excited, quite frightened, but he put his hand on the handle and he opened the door and he stepped through and he found himself in an alternate world. He looked around and everything looked very, very different. There were lots of candy everywhere. Sweets and chocolates were hanging from the walls and the ceilings of huge rooms. The trees were upside down. There were strange animals that he had never ever seen before. And he wandered around trying to make sense of this place, snapping off twigs of Toblerone and chewing them and enjoying them. And there was a great river, and that river, oh, it flowed with juice and ginger beer or lemonade, or if you can think of whichever your favorite drink is, there it was. And oh, he drank it by the gallon. And as he continued making his way through this magical world, he suddenly heard something. And when he looked up, there was a woman coming towards him. And this woman had the craziest red eyes that he had ever seen in his entire life. And she reached her hands out and she said, "Come here, boy." And the boy said, "Absolutely not. I might be adventurous, but I'm not a dafty." And so he started to run. And he ran through the world, trying to find places to escape. But no, he could not get rid of her. And the old woman, she ran after him, and you would not believe how fast she ran. She was as fast as a cheetah, and he was huffing and puffing and panting. But the lady, well, she was right after him, and her claws were out trying to grab a hold of him. "Come here, boy," she yelled. And suddenly she grabbed hold of him. He tried to get away. He was pulling and heaving and straining, but she was very, very strong. And he thought, what am I going to do? And then he had it. He was still holding that magic potion in his hand, and he drank it, and there was another magic door that appeared, and he rocked himself, and poof, he pushed himself through that door. But because she was gripping onto him so hard, she went in with him, and he found himself back in his forest. And that old lady, when she found herself in the world of the humans, well, she turned into a little owl. And that is my story for you today. So thank you very, very much, Ailey, and thank you very, very much, Mila, for your beautiful artworks. Please keep them coming. If you sent one in and you want to send another one, that's also totally fine, and we'll see how many we can get on the created, told a story with. So I see that Ailey is watching with her mum, and oh, I've got Isla and Karen here as well. So good to see you all. Now I have got a story here, and it's from the Panchatantra. And these are some of the most incredible stories in the world, and they come from India, and they were originally written in Sanskrit. And a lot of these stories are very wise stories, so they've got lots of lessons and morals in them. But I don't really mind about those, because what I really like is that the stories are actually really, really good. So the story that I am going to tell you is the wedding of a mouse. You see, there was once a holy man, a sage, and he and his wife, well, they loved each other deeply. And for a long, long time, they tried to have a child, but no child came. And after years of praying and trying all sorts of things, there was still no baby. So they thought to themselves, sadly, oh, we're just unlucky. We're just unfortunate. We are never, ever, ever going to have a child. And once they had decided on that, it was fine. They got used to the idea of the two of them growing old together, nice and happy. And one day, the sage went down to the river to bathe. He was there in the water, washing himself, when suddenly, he heard a sound, and he looked up, and across the skies he saw a hawk flying. And this hawk had a determined look in his eye. And this hawk looked down at the ground, and then suddenly, whoosh, he dive bombed. He immediately seized something, lifted it up, and the sage saw held in his claws a tiny baby mouse. Oh no, that poor, poor little mouse. Oh, I will pray for it and wish it a speedy end, he thought to himself. And he prayed for a miracle. And a miracle was granted, because somehow that tiny little baby mouse, it slipped through the claws of the hawk, and it started to fall to the ground. And the sage, he held out his hands and he started to follow it, getting ready to catch it, and it landed in his palm, lighter than a feather. And he looked at it, and it was quivering and trembling and shaking, and he thought, oh, this poor little mouse, it has had a very difficult day. But then he looked up and he saw the hawk was still circling, and he thought, how am I going to keep this little baby mouse safe? He had an idea. He placed it on the ground, and he put his hands over it, and whoosh, he turned it into a little baby girl. Well, she was a sweet little thing, and he thought, yes, this is it. This must be a gift from the gods. And so he took the baby girl home, and he and his wife raised her as if she was their very, very own. Oh, she was a lovely girl. She was very, very smart, very resourceful. She was a hard worker and always wanted to help her parents with whatever needed to be done around the house. And as she grew older and older, soon she reached the age where normally girls would get married. And her parents thought, she is such a wonderful girl. We want her to marry the finest of the finest. We don't want any old husband for her. Her husband has to be the best husband in the entire world. And the wife asked the husband, well, who do you think, husband? And the sage thought, well, every day the sun appears in the morning without fail. So I think that the sun god must be the most wonderful husband for anybody. And so he took his daughter over to see the sun god, and he told her that now she was the age for marriage, and they thought that he would make the finest husband in the entire world. And of course, the sun god was very pleased to hear this, and he looked at the girl and he thought, yes, she seems lovely. He thought how beautiful she was, and he could see how smart she was because her eyes were glinting and glistening. And he thought, yes, I will marry her. But the girl thought, well, wait a minute. She said, how about I spend one day with you, and then I will decide whether or not I want to marry you. And the sun god thought, ha, of course you'll want to marry me, but come on, one day. And so he he scooped her up and whoosh, off he went around the world. He showed her everything. He showed off how incredibly strong and powerful he was. He cast down his rays, and with one powerful ray, he showed her how he could burn up an entire ocean. He showed her how he could make people go inside their houses out of the fields. And he showed her that by hiding himself, he could make them race outside to try and find him. Oh, he thought he was wonderful. He told her about all the puny little humans down there and how when she married him, she would be a queen, higher and more important and better than anybody else in the world. And she thought, well, I don't know if I like the sound of that because I quite like the humans. And just then, a great cloud passed underneath the sun, and they had to wait for the cloud to pass. And when it was over, she said, "Please lower me to the ground." And he did. And she went to her parents and said, "I'm sorry, the sun god is just not for me." And the sage and his wife thought, "What? Well, who is finer than the sun?" And the wife said, "Well, did you see how the king of the clouds went and blocked the space between the sun and the earth? Maybe the king of the clouds is the finest husband in the world." And so they went to see the king of the clouds. And they explained the situation, and he said, "Yes, I will marry her." And she said, "Well, why don't I come to you and spend one day, and after that I will decide whether or not I want to marry you." "Huh? Of course you'll want to marry me," said the king of the clouds. But he agreed, and so he scooped her up and he put her on his head, and off they floated across the skies. Oh, he moved slowly, and he was full of laughter and fun. Everywhere he found jokes, he told stories, he laughed loud, he relaxed. And she thought, well, surely there must be more things that you do. And he thought, what? Floating across the sky is the most wonderful thing that I can do. I let all the other little clouds do all the hard work. But just then, the wind passed by and swept the king of the clouds along, and he was furious. And as soon as he became angry, he began to turn dark and thunderous, and he rumbled and trembled. And the girl thought, no, I don't like this at all. Somebody shouldn't change like this so quickly, so fast. No, I don't like this. I want to know how things are going to be. And she thought, nope, I don't want to marry the king of the clouds. And she asked him to lower her to the ground. Her parents, well, they weren't happy, and they said, but who is a finer husband than the king of the clouds? Did you see how the king of the winds swept the king of the clouds across the skies? I am sure that the king of the winds is the finest husband in the world. So they went to see the king of the wind. And when he saw the girl, he thought, yes, oh, she seems wonderful. She seems full of adventure. Yes, I will marry her. Well, I will spend one day with you, and then I will decide, said the girl. And so the king of the winds agreed. And he swept her off, and whoosh, they were off. As fast as you like. Oh, they whizzed around the world. And he showed her how to create magnificent hurricanes and tornadoes. He showed her how strong and powerful he was. He didn't stop moving. Everywhere he went, he was fast and impatient. He hated waiting. And after some time, the girl thought, my goodness, does he ever stop? Oh, does he never need time to pause and breathe? This is just too fast-paced for me. I'm sorry, could you lower me to the ground? She asked. And he did. And she told her parents, nope, not for me. Oh, well, who is better than the wind? Somebody who is not so fast and not so impatient. How about the Lord of the mountain? And behind where they lived, there was a great mountain that reached up into the sky. And they thought, yes, that is it. So they climbed to the very top of the mountain, and they met the Lord right there. And they explained the situation, and he said, yes, I will marry her. And she thought, well, I'll spend one day with you, and then I will decide. And so she did. Oh, she loved Mountain. Mountain told her story after story, stories from thousands of years ago. So interesting, so full of life. He sang songs. Oh, it was the most beautiful day. But she just thought, well, I don't know if there's anything else to do up here. Everything is so steady and so reliable and so solid, and I quite like a little bit of chaos. And so she thought, I just don't think that I want to marry you. I'm sorry. And so she went back to her parents and she told them. And they said, what? Well, I don't think there is anybody more finer, much finer, or more important or more wonderful than the king, the lord of the mountain. And then the mountain boomed and he said, I know somebody. There is somebody who burrows around inside me all the time. And they are quite a magnificent person. And so they said, well, who is that? It is the king of the mice. The king of the mice? Are you sure? They went to see the king of the mice. And there was something about him that she thought, oh, he's really rather beautiful. And so he said, I will marry her. And she said, well, I will spend one day with you and then I will decide. And so she spent the day with the king of the mice. And she saw how smart he was and how hard he worked and how resourceful and how resilient he was, how aware he was of his surroundings. And these were things that she valued about herself. And she thought, yes, yes, I think that I will marry the king of the mice. And so after the day had ended, she went to her parents and she said, Father, Mother, I have found the person that I want to marry. And when the sage saw that she wanted to marry the king of the mice, he was delighted. He roared with laughter and he told her the story of how she had come to live with them, how she had once been a tiny little baby mouse. And he said to her, I will now turn you back into what you truly are. And he waved his fingers over her, and there she was, a tiny, beautiful, perfect little mouse. And so the mice, they got married and they lived happily ever after. And because these stories are all supposed to have lessons, well, I am not going to tell you what the lesson is in that story, because that is something that maybe you all might have different ideas about. So I shall let you think of that for yourself. But thank you very, very much for joining me. I hope that you enjoyed the story. I see a few people who've also clocked in. I see Daniel and I see Ronald, who likes a little bit of chaos. Yes, as do we all. So yes, thank you very, very much. Enjoy your evening, and tomorrow I will be here at 7 o'clock with yet another story. So join me then. And if you do enjoy the stories, please do share them among your networks. It would be great to have more people joining us. So thank you. And also massive thanks again to Mila and Ailey for their beautiful, beautiful artworks. If you haven't sent me one yet, then please do, and I will see what I can do. But for now, it's good night.